Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie and TV discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I'm joined by Sean Koufax.
What is this? Hey, hold on. Is that Charlie Callis?
Oh, yeah, it might be. And of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and there are no depths so low as to keep us from stooping.
Bruce Leslie coming to you from the bottom of a submarine. Deep in the depths of the Indian Ocean.
I'm still fooling around with my mixer.
We've had some sound problems here, and so we were trying to fix them before the show and everything. And Bruce goes, "I got it," and of course pulls a Bruce Leslie. But we are here today to talk about something that I don't think many of us knew was a real thing, but Bruce.
Not only is it that, not only were we not sure about this, but when you look at the IMDb user reviews for this thing, everyone basically says the same thing. I didn't know if I dreamt this or not, so thank God.
Okay, so that perfectly describes my experience with this. I know that I watched some of the first episode real time when it came on television. I know that I've seen this thing on television, but I spent a good 30 years of my life wondering, like, was I confused about that? Like, where did this come from? Believe it or not, I had a very similar experience with the Star Wars Holiday Special, that before the land of the internet came around to confirm whether or not I just had fever dreams about these two properties, which I will argue are quite similar in some ways, that the internet confirmed, yes, indeed, they did exist, and there's a reason your memory is so faint.
Yes, Virginia, yes. There is a legend of the superheroes, and that's what we'll be covering today. There were 2 episodes back in 1970, I believe 9, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Serves. We'll be talking about those, and you can check those out. They're available either on the DC app, or they're also on YouTube as well. Quality's not as well
on YouTube. I was wondering about that.
Quality's not
they used
hot.
to be on YouTube. I think that YouTube got takedowns for this when DC streaming came out, because that's how I had perused this in the past, and then more recently when I looked for it, it wasn't there.
Maybe.
Look, man, when you mess with the Marshall Warfield people.
Step back and watch out, everybody. Now, we do want to mention, though, that this was voted. Now, while Bruce brought it up, it was actually voted upon by the people that support the show over at patreon.com/HMP. They voted this one in. And listen, I'm not going to say that we didn't grease the wheels on this particular vote, because we did.
I remember distinctly saying during Dinger Zone, look, we're doing it wrong if we're not doing this.
Yeah.
It's true. So, if you want to get in on those machinations and then be also able to vote for what we watch every month, head on over to patreon.com/HMP and join in the fun today, everybody. We really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone that supports us over at Patreon. Now, as you might imagine, a television program from 1979 does not have a lot of commercials widely available on the internet here. But what I'd like to do to get you into a feel of what you might be getting in this Legends of the Superheroes is I'm going to play a quick little clip here from the show, and, just to give you a flavor. Here we go.
I wish you'd quit calling me retired man. I want people to remember me by my old name, a name that struck terror in the hearts of villains everywhere. The Scarlet...
Cyclone.
Something like that.
Scarlet Cyclone.
That's it.
In gratitude for all your past services to mankind, or in deference to the ladies, person kind, we've all chipped in for this little token of our esteem. Here you are. Read the inscription. No, the other side.
Are you kidding? I can't read that without my glasses.
But you're wearing your glasses.
That's the kind of comedy that you'll get from Legends of the Superheroes.
And that's when it's really flying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't usually come that quickly.
And here's the IMDb plotline. A team up of some of DC Comics' greatest superheroes together for 2 specials, a race to stop the United Supervillains' plot to destroy the Earth, and later, a roast in tribute to all of the heroes, hosted by Ed McMahon. That's right, Ed McMahon is in something that we're watching this week, everybody, because that's the world we live in.
And he's a killer in it. I mean, he is one of the bright and shining moments in that roast.
Oh man, the guy, man. He had a serious drinking problem. That's why he agreed to taking this, and B, he was willing to do anything to get out from under Johnny's shadow, I think.
Yeah,
nailed it.
Not too shabby, even though we do get a sweet Johnny Carson impression from the weather wizard in this. But before we get down to who all is in this bad boy, we've got to hold on. Skype decided to take up the whole screen as opposed to just part of it.
Oh boy.
There we go. You know what time it is, everybody.
It's time for Bruce's comic book connection.
All right, Bruce, what do you got for us?
Mordru the Merciless is the leader of the team of supervillains featured in this thing we watched, and he is indeed a character from the comic books. He was created by Jim Shooter and introduced in 1968, years before Shooter thought it was cool for superheroes to slap their ladies around. Now, Mordru is a Lord of Chaos, and thus a fierce enemy of Dr. Fate, who of course serves the Lords of Order. He's also battled Amethyst of Jim World and the Justice Society of America. In the future, the 30 and 31st centuries to be exact, Mordru's primary foes are the Legion of Superheroes, and he is arguably the team's most powerful enemy. Mordru begins his existence on Jim World as Rin, one of the twin sons of Lord Topaz and Lady Turquoise, and Rin becomes entranced by the study of black magic. When performing a summoning ritual, Rin accidentally resurrects a gemstone golem called Flaw, a servant of the child and one of the Lords of Chaos. Flaw chooses Rin to be the Lord's instrument as they attempt to retake Jim World. The Lords giving Rin tremendous magical power rename him Mordru. While on Jim World, we discover that Mordru has one of the most bizarre vulnerabilities in all of DC Comics, and that would be taphophobia. So, Adam, why don't you let our listeners know exactly what taphophobia is?
It's when you go to the beach and you see those taffy pulling machines and you're like, I'm not getting into that.
And I had it written in my notes to say, no, it's not the fear of taffy.
Dang it.
It is the fear of being buried alive. Mordru's first battle with the superheroes of Earth occurs during a meeting between Earth 1's Justice League of America and Earth 2's Justice Society of America. Mordru, who inhabits the Earth 1 universe, magically reaches back through time from the 30th century to the 20th in order to capture members of the Justice League and Justice Society and bring them to the future so they can retrieve artifacts that would free the Demons 3 and allow him to steal their powers. During the battle, the Justice League and the Justice Society ally with the Legion of Superheroes. Needless to say, his plan fails. Now, after Crisis on Infinite Earths, Mordru is recast as a timeless Lord of Chaos, and all of his Jim World backstory is cast aside. In the 30th century, Mordru becomes one of the most powerful figures in the universe. Mordru appears on Xerox. That's the Sorcerer's Planet, which it's spelt with a Z, not an X, so that they don't get sued. And he joins the Sorcerers, rises in power, and takes control in a coup. In doing so, he steals the other sorcerer's powers. However, his apprentice, Miss Anal, also known as the White Witch, escapes. Mordru goes on to create an unstoppable, tyrannical space empire by conquering nearby planets. He combines the technology of the conquered planets with his sorcery, a la Dr. Doom. Mordru goes on to defeat the Legion in a massive space battle, but fails to notice that Superboy and Mon-El snuck off from the fight. He's then quickly sealed in an airless vault at super speed by Superboy and Mon-El, and this triggers his phobia, rendering him comatose. Gabriel Dell brought Mordru to the masses by playing him in Legends of the Superheroes, but that, shockingly, is not Mordru's only televised appearance. He also appeared in Justice League United's first episode, which focused on Booster Gold, where, for some reason, he thought it was a good idea to fuse Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman into one person. Additionally, he appeared in the Legion of Superheroes animated show, not to be confused with the Legends of the Superheroes, on an episode titled Child's Play that was strangely missing a murderous Chucky doll. As hard as it may be to believe, the show we're reviewing today is his only live-action appearance, but I suppose anything is possible on next season's Supergirl.
Hey, man, they've done crazier things on that show, so who's to say?
So, Bruce, before we go any further, Bruce, of everything that you just said, how much of that did you read?
Pretty much all of it.
So you read everything about like Mordru how he started and all that stuff?
No. I didn't read the Silver Age stuff. I should be more clear. I've read most of the post-crisis stuff.
Because I had no idea who Mordru was watching the Legends of Superheroes, because I just find Dr. Fate so boring.
See, I'm kind of a Dr. Fate fan, and that's where I got to know Mordru the most often. Even though he has more appearances in the Legion of Superheroes than he does in Dr. Fate, I'll be honest, I haven't read much of that Silver Age or even Bronze Age Legion of Superheroes stuff. Yeah. You know, there's all kinds of Legions of Superhero stories with Superboy out there that not only have I not read, I don't know that they're easy to find reprints or trades of either.
Good to know.
That wouldn't be like DC making things hard to find and difficult. Doesn't sound like the DC I know at all.
Oh, you know what? They're probably all streaming, or not streaming, but they're probably all available on that DC app that has lots of old comics that you can read on there that I just don't really take advantage of very often.
Which, by the way, I did do that. I tried the comic on the TV. Bruce, you're right. It's practically undoable. It's the worst idea ever.
It definitely takes some adjusting. There was also a time when I thought that watching a show on my computer was undoable too.
That's a good point.
You know, it just takes some adjusting.
Who would watch something on an iPad? Well, everybody.
Exactly. But I don't know, man. This is an interesting cast because we have like a combination of absolute trash actors, which I don't mean to say that in a way to...
How dare you?
I don't want to say that in a... Just what I mean is this was their only credit, then they were thrown in the trash. I'm not saying that their performance was necessarily trash, but we've got actors that... honestly, I don't know that we can prove they were ever alive other than that we've seen them on screen in this show, combined with like some pretty darn accomplished folks. It's so weird, the combination. And boy, the talent shows when Frank Gorshin performs a line and then that Hawkman guy says something.
You mean he has lines other than the giant cacaw coming out of his mouth when he flexes his muscles, which is clearly
honestly,
the only reason
he had one line where he says, "Did you see Batman?" to Solomon Grundy, who Solomon Grundy even emotes better than Hawkman.
It's true.
That guy was cast for the pecs and nothing else. He get it? Birds, pectoralis.
You know what? You should just see yourself out.
I don't get that.
Terrible.
But
did you write for this thing?
Oh, you know, I wish I would have. If only I had a time machine. That's the first thing I would do. Before I went back to kill Hitler, I would stop and write for this thing. Now, do either of you know how much time passed in between the actual airing of episode 1 and episode 2?
I don't, and I looked it up. No, I don't even know if it did air the roast.
I think it did, man. There's no way you've got tape with Ed McMahon on it and you don't air it.
That is true.
But I thought this is a weird time in
McMahon
television.
Money.
But this is a weird time in television when there's 2 episodes of a television show filmed. Like you know, they did the pilot and then they picked it up for one more episode. That's so weird to me. Like you'd think there are unreleased episodes that at least DC would have streaming on their new app or something. But I get the idea that this is all that was ever written and filmed. Which is so weird to think, like, we don't know if we need to do a show for next week or not.
Here's how this show feels to me. It feels like they erected a set and they were like, okay, here's the deal. We got this set and then we're going to tear this down basically, get it to the bones, redress it. That'll be another set. And we need to make as much content as we can around these 2 sets. And that's pretty much what they did, it looks like.
And it's almost not a set, man. Wow. It's like they put some emblems on some circles. I mean, it is very much like a game show set, which is interesting because Bill Carruthers, the guy that directed this, or these 2 episodes. His other credits are things like Press Your Luck, The Dating Game.
Yeah.
I can't think of some of the other game shows, but he was like a game show director. This is produced by, Hanna-Barbera, who not only do they do animation, they do cheap animation. They're not even like high-end animation. And boy, they tried to take the same approach to live action that they do to animation with reusing the background over and over again. Let's see, we've got one stage and a gas station. Let's make some episodes.
Yeah. I am really glad that I did not see this when I was a kid. And the reason why is because I would have loved it, especially with the opening.
Yeah, I loved it.
The kid, every time when the introduction to the show where each individual superhero comes out
with Gary Owens, announcing it. Come on.
It is like such, like, I could imagine 5-year-old me just being like, oh my God, this is the greatest show I've ever seen.
Now, you're probably not going to be surprised to hear that 5-year-old me was a big fan of the Carol Burnett show.
Sure. The 45-year-old you was a big fan.
Of course. But when this show came out, I think in my mind, and it's really dangerous when you're sitting here 40 years later and trying to put thoughts into my mind from 1979. But I think I had the idea that this was going to be like the Carol Burnett show, but with superheroes. And I think I got really excited for this, but I remember like loving the live action Solomon Grundy show. Like that's all that I really had as a formed memory for a good part of my life was I know there was a live action Solomon Grundy. Like there's part of me that thought maybe Solomon Grundy was like a guest on Carol Burnett or something weird like that.
Solomon Grundy want pants too. It's funny, man, because the people on this show, it is really, it's just jarring watching the people who actually have stage presence and those who don't. So, the guy who's playing Solomon Grundy, I can't remember his name.
It's like Mickey Morton or something like that.
That is exactly it.
Yeah, it's not an actor that I know from anything else.
Yeah, he played Mala in the Star Wars Christmas special.
Oh boy, and talk about 2 shows that deserve to be compared to one another.
I know it's almost the same thing. So, like that guy has something where you just want to watch him, and he's not, and he's doing a pretty good job being Solomon Grundy. And then every time Adam West and Burt Ward show up, you're like, oh wow, yeah, that's a kick in the pants the show needs. I understand why that's there. But just about every single other person on the show, just look right past them, like the woman playing Black Canary has done 2 other things on this show.
She was on Charlie's Angels too back then. I watched Charlie's Angels back then.
Oh, and she was on Charlie's Angels.
Yeah, Danuta, something like that is her name. Danuta Wesley.
Well, she doesn't have a big presence.
She was well known for her chowder buckets back in the 70s. And I think she was usually in a show that involved like a tight shirt, and she's like the girl that would pop out and be like, make the guy blush or something like that. I don't think she was ever expected to rely too heavily on her line reading.
Why am I not surprised that you instantly knew the name Danuta Wesley?
Because, I do some research.
Well, excuse me. I believe that was in 1978.
But she's credited as just Danuta, and there's more than one Danuta from the 70s, so you had to make sure you got the right Danuta.
Oh, and the other person, of course, Frank Gorshin. But although I found him kind of annoying.
I tell you what, does this not feel like this was the thing that Jim Carrey saw that informed his Riddler?
That is an excellent point, sir, because that is just about exactly what he did.
Frank Gorshin is the only Riddler that most people would have ever been familiar with.
Yeah, but this is like a special over the top.
Yeah.
This is the crazy film, man.
One thing that's always kind of, I don't know if amazed is the right word, but one thing that's always sort of surprised me is that Batman and the Riddler is really the biggest credit on Frank Gorshin's film and television career. Like, he seems like a guy who should have been way bigger before he was the Riddler than he was. But then you also have to realize he was an absolute outstanding stage actor. And a lot of that makes sense when you see what he brought to the Riddler. But he was a much more accomplished stage actor than film actor.
And comedian. I mean, he was an impersonator. and which I didn't know until very recently. And not only was he a good impersonator, but he was like neck and neck with Rich Little, basically.
And this is also a time where the entertainment industry really didn't differentiate between comedic actor and comedian. So anyone who is a comedic actor could have a little skit to go act out on stage and call themselves a comedian too. You know, like there's a different thing now with that than there was then.
Yes.
But I think it comes from the old vaudeville tradition or something. I don't know anything else about Frank Gorshin, man. The guy is a real treat compared to some of the other.
I'll
folks
say
we
this,
watch.
like of all the cast members and stuff, you know, for good or for bad, he is giving it his all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were smart to feature him. I mean, I guess the biggest scene he had was when he's the psychiatrist, which, you know, Captain Marvel, what an idiot to just go by a roadside psychiatrist's office without an appointment, walls, or a door. Just sit down and start talking.
We've got 2 walls, no ceiling, and it's in the out of doors. This seems like it's on the up and up. I'll go lay down on this man's couch that just appeared out of bloody thin air.
Why are we picking nits over this thing? I mean, let's be honest.
Well, I do like that Frank Gorshin gets to go from his typical Frank Gorshin Riddler performance to sort of a Sigmund Freud spoof, and then into like Foghorn Leghorn out of nowhere. Then he becomes English for a little bit. Then, you know, he's really showing off his impression abilities, I guess, here. I don't know what the difference is between a good impression and good acting, but this feels more like impressions than acting, you know?
Yes. I was so certain watching this thing. It just smacked of Bruce Valanche to me.
Well, he was busy this year.
So I looked it up. It is not him. He has nothing to do with it.
Sadly, Hanna-Barbera couldn't afford Bruce Valanche at this point in time. One thing that they were smart to do, though, is they really focused their casting on the villains, which for such a low-quality product, they figured out way back then what it took Hollywood sometimes a little while to figure out. But you really got it. The villains carry these sorts of stories more than the heroes do. Another person, and let's see, I wanted to talk about Charlie Callis, the guy that plays Sinestro. Were you guys familiar with him?
Oh, yeah.
What is that?
That's what Charlie Callis does.
Yeah. Now, when he was dressed as the gypsy, though, he bore a striking resemblance to Jamie Farr, I thought. You know how Jamie Farr was always cross-dressing in MASH and everything?
Jamie Farr wishes
profile.
he was Charlie Callis.
Oh, man, I don't know. Charlie Callis probably wishes he had Jamie Farr's bank account at the peak of his career, though.
Without a doubt.
But do you know what role other than Sinestro Charlie Callis is most famous for, Sean?
Sean?
Yes, you, sir.
History of the World.
No, man. Pete's Dragon. He was the voice of Pete's Dragon. Do you know the name of Pete's Dragon, by the way? I had a Twitter back and forth with a friend of mine about the name of Pete's Dragon a couple months back.
It feels like.
Oh yeah, now you're talking about me.
It feels like one of those that, like, the second you hear it, you're going to be like, oh yeah.
It's Elliot, man.
Oh,
Elliot is the name of Pete's Dragon, and
See?
Charlie Callis was the voice of Elliot. So
I did not remember that.
Pete's Dragon, the original Pete's Dragon, of course, not the more recent one.
That
but that's
remake
another one of
is
those that
awful.
you remembered as being better than it was, I think.
I liked it as a kid, man. I'll tell you that much.
Me too. But yeah, Charlie Callis, the voice of Elliot in Pete's Dragon. Now, here's a bit of casting that I didn't recognize when I was watching this. And when I saw who it was, it kind of shocked me. But Dr. Savannah, especially with the prosthetics he has as Dr. Savannah, but that's Ernest T. Bass from the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah.
I had no idea, man. So I always liked Ernest T. Bass, but a very different character from Dr. Savannah. This is one of those little guys that was a good physical comedic actor back then.
To me, the biggest surprise was Jeff Altman.
Now, Jeff Altman, let's talk about Jeff Altman, the weather wizard. He was Huey Hogg on the Dukes of Hazzard. That's how I know him. Around this same time, he was playing Boss Hogg's nephew, Huey Hogg, who was a real idiot, a nincompoop. Apparently, he was a contemporary of David Letterman. Like, they kind of came up in entertainment at the same time.
Yeah, it's the reason why he had a stand-up career is because of Letterman.
But it could not.
He even put out an album. I own it, or I owned it.
It's like Flip Your Omelet or something like that.
It was oh man,
It had something to do with eggs. I really felt like it had something to do with eggs, the title of his album.
Well, sweet and meaty was his thing. He was like, he constantly kept talking about sweet and meaty.
But for an actual stand-up comic with a career, he does a pretty bad job with the Weather Wizard stand-up routine at the roast. I mean,
okay, so let's because I think it's the lesser of the two by a long shot. Let's do the roast. Let's deconstruct the roast, get that out of the way, and then go to the one with the actual story.
Well, first off, the roast is not entertaining to me in the least. Like every now and then there'll be a good dated joke that I enjoy just because I get it. Like I can't even think of what it wouldn't even be like a Jimmy Carter joke. That's too easy to recognize. But there were some dated jokes that I really enjoyed the fact that I just happened to know what they were referring to, because a lot of people probably wouldn't. But I think the thing that catches everybody's attention with the roast and why the roast just goes nowhere with any modern audience is because of the guest appearance of Ghetto Man.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, that really
funny.
He is actually funny, but man, the second one they just go, and here's a new superhero, everybody, Ghetto Man. And my first, like out loud, I go, oh no, don't do that, don't do that. This is not going to be good. And thank God he was funny. He really was. He had a good bit.
Funny, but even Ed McMahon's reaction to him, everybody else's reaction, it was like, boy, this racism is far too casual for me.
They felt like they just let a brother in there for 5 seconds, and then they were like, all right, time's up, you got to go. And then he's just
but I do
peace,
like
everybody.
That he pointed out things like, you know, I can't help but notice not a whole lot of color with you superheroes, and you all tend not to come to my neighborhood, and that's why I'm there in the first place. And, some good stuff, stuff. He was better than the jokes that framed him.
Yeah.
Jeff Altman's album, You Were So Close, is I'll Flip You Like a Cheese Omelet.
Okay, I knew it had something to do with eggs.
It's like there's eggs in there somewhere.
Yeah,
which is a really weird thing for me to know, man.
Yes, it is.
Like the Huey Hogg part, I expect me to know Huey Hogg. I don't expect me to know about the omelet.
Yeah, but he there's so much weirdness in this, and like I doing a bit of digging on this. Adam West hated doing this. He hated being there.
I can see that.
That's so amazing to me. Like, all you wanted to do was be Batman forever. You finally get a chance to be Batman 11 years after Batman goes off the air. And you're complaining about it. It's awful. Don't get me wrong. I get that it's awful, but it's what you want to be doing.
And
he looks like he's in okay shape too, really, if you're honest with,
No, he's not.
I mean, he's not. For him.
Do you think Burt Ward was really doing those flips in his intro scene?
Oh, Burt Ward was.
Absolutely.
Who was putting on a little bit of weight was Burt Ward.
They had to cover up the gray hair for this, but it's hard for me to believe that Huntress even got paid for her appearance. I think she says 2 lines over the 2 episodes and mostly involves sitting down and holding a crossbow.
She looks very intimidating.
But she does not sit like a lady. I'll just leave it at that. I watched how she sat compared to how Black Canary sits.
If she was my kid, she would have been yelled at.
There was no question whose trailer Hawkman was going to check out after the shoot.
First of all, I would not be shocked if any of that was going down. I mean, like, look, that's a big hunky dude. Sure, he couldn't act, but, all he's got to do is take his shirt off there, and he was already bigger than, the biggest of superheroes on this program.
Oh, yeah. Like, the idea of him battling Jeff Altman one-on-one would have been hilarious to me. Like, just straight up fist fight between him and Jeff Altman, who's almost 4'8".
All right, so I think we can all agree the roast was quite a bust. And if you were to skip any of these, that's the one to do it because, man, it is almost 50 minutes worth of and I love roast. I love,
but they weren't really roasting anyone.
Not really.
That's the weird
right.
thing.
No.
And it was I don't know, the best joke to me of the roast was when Ed McMahon said last time he went to St. Louis, he fell in a vat of Budweiser and wound up wrestling a Clydesdale. Like, I can remember like in the early 80s that it was like a common running joke that Ed McMahon was just a horrible, incurable alcoholic.
Yeah.
Like, it's so weird to think that was like a running joke about him of all people.
And there were many known like fall down drunks working in the business constantly. I mean, Dean Martin made a career out of it.
Yeah. Dean Martin's license plate on his car said drunkie.
Wow.
And he never got a DUI.
Wow.
I got to tell you, to me, the worst part of the roast is Ruth Buzzzzi.
Okay, let's talk more about she's famous from Laugh In. So you'd think she would be right at home at something like this, and she's not.
Well, Ruth, I don't find much of Laugh In funny. I mean, there's certain and I'm somebody who can pick through a lot of not funny to find the funny.
You don't think Richard Nixon saying "sock it to me" is just hilarious?
Of course I do. But so I never really found Ruth Buzzzzi all that funny until she was on Sesame Street, and she's great on Sesame Street. But her on this is more like Ruth Buzzzzi on Laugh-In, which I don't find any of that funny. And you know, where you're going to be my sixth husband. Come on.
No one's that insane. Speaking of roast, I did like her in the roast and stuff when you know, she's just getting crap from everybody, and that's always funny. But that's not her being funny. That's other people giving her a hard time.
They needed Marsha Warfield in the roast.
Yes, they did.
First
she
of all,
would have been great.
She's probably Marsha Warfield plays everyone watching this movie. It goes, girl, let me tell you about what's going on right now. You ain't gonna believe this stupid crap.
She was, she was probably the fourth or fifth best person on Night Court. So that's saying something, because that was a loaded cast. But I think
she is my fourth favorite bailiff on Night Court.
She's my third favorite, so we're close. But yeah, man, they needed Marsha Warfield for the roast here. I don't know. Was there much else to say about the roast? Ruth Buzzzzi shows up. Hawkman's mother shows up for some reason.
Well, because Hawkman can't speak.
Oh, that's true. He can't say. And then they have the like the breakaway skit gag, which roasts don't typically have like skits
not
intermingled
usually
with them that I'm aware of. But they have Giganta and the Atom. They want to get married.
First of all, I will say this: special effects right there, not horrible.
Better than that Atom special effect that we had in that weird pilot we watched from like the 90s.
Yeah.
That Justice League pilot. Now, I want to talk about Alicia Brevard, the actress that plays Giganta. Do you guys know much about her at all? Do you know anything about her? She's actually pretty accomplished in the world of drama.
Do not
like
know.
As a academic theater professor and stuff like that. But Alicia Brevard underwent one of the first sexual reassignment procedures performed in the United States.
Really?
Yes. Let's see. Here's what she wrote a book. I'm trying to find the name of the book. I had it here in the notes, but she referred to herself as a, transsexual, transgender, which is the more appropriate term that we use now. Wasn't really in the vocabulary back when she wrote the book, but she talked about being essentially the first transsexual in Hollywood. Something else I found out, though, that was really interesting when I read about her is that she attended graduate school at Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so we got some roots here at home, but it's interesting. This is why I say this is important to talk about. This past season on Supergirl, the CW and Greg Berlanti has really been pushing this narrative that they have TV's first transgender superhero. They have an actress on the show who is an openly transgendered female, male to female, transgendered female, who is playing Dream Girl. And the actress and the character are both transgender. But they don't have TV's first transgender superhero because, well, Giganta's a villain. So maybe that's the hair they're trying to split. But I would guarantee you anything, nobody at the CW, Greg Berlanti, the community as a whole probably have no idea that Alicia Brevard was the first transgender comic book property sort of character on television. And I think maybe she deserves a little bit more recognition for that, since the CW is making such a big deal about this current season of Supergirl.
Yeah, see, you're not as like smart as you think there over there at the Berlanti verse. Come on now, there's people that've done it before.
Berlanti. But anyway, man, tip of the hat to Alicia Brevard as Giganta, a character who is a gorilla that transitioned to human, played by someone who transitioned from male to female.
You know, we've all been gorillas from time to time. Now, I do want to...
And she's a member of the Thundering Herd, too. I can't mention that enough, that I'm proud to have yet another Marshall University tie in the world of comic books.
Now, I do want to say this, for only because he has two different costumes, but Charlie Callis's Sinestro costume in the roast looks like a blue version of Tingle from Zelda. You guys, like smart, video game people will know what that is. But man, oh man, it's like the exact outfit. It's kind of weird. All he needed is a little tiny odd cap, and he'd have been off to the races, man.
I thought he looked like Hermie.
I think that
There's
in a show of middle-aged men who look bad in tights, Charlie Callis was the most middle-aged who looked the worst. Like he was the leading example of why some men shouldn't wear spandex in a show literally littered with people like Adam West and Frank Gorshin.
Well, I'll be honest though. I think he gives probably, outside of Gorshin, probably one of the better performances in this entire thing is in the first episode there for sure.
Yeah, he keeps that to a minimum.
He would have been better in a pair of trousers.
I liked him in the dress.
Yeah, you know what? He was a very good gypsy.
I thought the gypsy bit was like one of the stronger portions of that program. I was just like, hey, you know what? It's stupid and silly, but it's stupid and silly enough in a way that I can enjoy it.
Oh, Adam, you know how you like making people mad for no reason sometimes? You should totally, next time you run into a Greek person and you know they're Greek, just call them a gypsy.
Gypsies? Good.
You know what? Next time you run into a Roma person, just, call them a gypsy.
I'll do it. You know I don't care.
Oh, boy.
I will.
Romani. We understand that the proper term is Romani, people. We understand that. We're using the linguistics of the show.
It was the time that it was said, and Now, all right, moving on.
What do you? I still get the idea that this was a show that was like written and acted out, filmed, televised all within a week. Like, I feel like they did the first episode, waited to see what people thought, then did the second episode. Then when they heard there wasn't a third, like, I really get the idea this is put together like a high school yearbook. This show.
I think what they did is that they had everything together, and they shot them both concurrently. And so you're right, from production to end of production, I'm going to guess it was a week for both episodes, because I mean, realistically, how much is involved with the roast part of it?
Why would they change gear from the first episode to the second so severely without feedback?
I think it's because there was somebody there going, hey, if we have 2 episodes of this thing, that's even better than having one. And since we already have this big set already, we have the stage set up, we can just do that.
I agree. I think that's how it went. It was more of a how can we juice this Apple-y
I really need a behind-the-scenes documentary about the making of this show now, because I think that they wanted it to be an adventure show, and I think that every episode was supposed to be similar to the first episode, to the pilot. And when that one wasn't received well, they said, wait, give us another chance. We can change gears. And they did the roast, and then they were not given a chance to do a third one.
Bruce, be honest with me. Be honest with me right now. When you first watched an episode of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, were you really upset that they didn't go and save the world from something?
A little bit.
All they do is sit around in the house and talk about who's not taking the trash out.
Oh, man, I was much more upset the first time I saw Space Ghost Coast to Coast, but that's a different story.
Oh, my gosh. I love one of my favorite shows of that era.
Harvey Birdman. That was another one that disappointed me.
I loved that show. Did you get that thing I sent you?
Oh, but man, the difference between like episode 1 and episode 2 just doesn't make any sense to me at all. If anything,
they shot it all. I mean, honestly, man, they shot it all the same day. I mean, they did. They had to.
There's no way they had Ed McMahon around and didn't put him in both episodes.
Oh, that's a good point.
And also, there were people in the first episode that weren't able to make it back for the second episode. Like,
wow,
Morgan.
So they really did shoot this on. They did not shoot this in one day. That is very surprising.
Yeah, I think it again with Sinestro's outfit being changed, it feels like they would have had to have at least 2
differences. Ruth Buzzzzi was pulled around. I almost wonder if this was something like there might have been 3 months in between when the two were broadcast or something. Like these were just movie of the week type deals where they would say, we'll do about 3 or 4 of these a year, like they used to do with Captain America and with Spider-Man.
Right. Man, that's crazy.
But everything about this is crazy. I mean, is it fair to say that this might be the lowest production quality of anything that we've ever reviewed when you account for everything?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That Superman musical was pretty bad.
Oh yeah, up and away.
Yeah, but that was, I don't know. I felt like that was at least a little bit coherent. That was performed probably on par with the actual stage play it was based on. I feel like this, I mean, it didn't change into a roast halfway through.
It's true.
And then the roast wasn't crummy.
And there wasn't a whole lot of for no reason at a gas station. And then don't forget, they keep ruining that picnic.
And there's this,
first of all, the stupid crap of interrupting the picnic. I love that like horrible running gag stuff. It's the Simpsons bit of it's funny, then you do it till it's not funny, and then eventually it comes back around to funny again.
Okay,
and that's what that picnic scene was for me, for sure.
Well, January 18th, 1979, January 25th, 1979. So 1 and 2 were a week apart, with no 3 ever having been filmed.
But that's when they aired.
Yeah, that's when they aired. But I'm saying I think some of us have an understanding that like the pilot gets made and then they pick up a season and they may cancel it after 2 episodes, but there's more than 2 episodes filmed. I honestly believe by all evidence that anyone's ever collected that this only had 2 episodes filmed, and it preempted a show called Project UFO when they showed it. So it's like they were showing it in another show's time spot.
Man, can you imagine, like now, imagine that TV is the way it was in 1979 now. And you only had 3 channels. And on those channels, any given night, you could be watching Super Train or Manimal or this. It's amazing.
Oh, man, Manimal was a good one.
Yeah.
Man, and I used to get Automan and Turbo Teen confused, the live action and the cartoon.
Well, I was going to besmirch you for that, but let's be honest. I mean, they're both car themed shows, you know.
Specifically a human turning into a car.
Right. Well, but Automan doesn't turn into a car. He has a car.
I thought Automan turned into a car, just like Turbo.
Automan comes out of a computer. He's an automation, and he's got a car, and he's got a sidekick named Cursor.
Because he kind of had those Tron lines on his body, and then so did the car.
It is basically, what if Tron was hilarious? And that's what the show is.
If you've ever wondered what like an old people's home will sound like in 40 years, this is it.
Oh, man. See, I have very, very erroneous memories of Automan. Oh. I used to get Automan and Teen Turbo or Turbo Teen confused, even though Turbo Teen was a cartoon. Oh, man. Desi Arnaz Jr.
If he got hot, he'd turn into the car. If he got cold, he'd turn into the kid again.
Desi Arnaz Jr. was, wow, his career highlight was probably Automan.
Well, he wasn't on this.
He would have fit in okay on this.
Sometimes you got to shoot for the stars. Now, I love how for all intents and purposes, Justice League
all
here.
Intensive purpose.
I said intensive. I said it correctly.
I know you did, but I say it the other way.
Good. All right. I just want to make sure that I'm not the dum-dum here. But it's kind of wild. First of all, no Superman. Also a big shocker for this thing as well. That's kind of weird that they wouldn't have, another.
Well, it's 79. They probably couldn't get him.
Well, you couldn't get Reeves for sure, but you could have got
definitely. But I mean, even just the property.
Well, maybe.
Oh yeah, because you got to think the Salkins. The Salkins have the live action rights that probably included television.
Now you said the word Salkins, and now that actually answers my question because those dudes were ruthless.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so no surprise there. I love though how like this entire group, their whole plan is like, well, we can all meet up at the gas station when we'll all split up, we'll cover more area, and we'll all meet back at the gas station to have what superhero, huh? That's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard.
There's no better way for communication other than stopping at the gas station.
We'll all get to a gas station in Pasadena or something like that. It's all California-based, which is hilarious.
I could totally see if it was a great gas station, but this place is not great.
It's got Marsha Warfield, though, at least.
It does have Marsha Warfield.
Who is just not getting off that phone. How many quarters is she pumping into that bad boy to stay on the phone that long? And who's on the other end just going, I got to hear more about this?
It was Alice. She called her by name several times.
Yes, several times.
Alice. But here's another thing, man. I hate to go pointing out inconsistencies in this otherwise very tight plot.
Yes.
But the idea is there's a doomsday device in the Legion of Doom headquarters that are going to destroy all the superheroes, and they want to lure them there to destroy them with the bomb. But at the same time, they keep trying to provide obstacles to keep them from getting there. And then they turn around and give Captain Marvel the address to hurry them back up to get there. Like, this makes no sense. At the gas station, they're trying to slow people down, and then later on, they're trying to speed them up.
No, you're see, your logic has a flaw in it because the bomb doesn't require the Super Friends to be there at the island. The bomb goes off, it kills everyone except for the Legion of Doom.
But here's the thing, though, and I understand that thought. And then I got the idea, well, they want them to show up exactly when it goes off, perhaps, because they're using delaying tactics at the gas station, but then they send Frank Gorshin's Riddler to help Captain Marvel figure out where to go.
Really?
Yes, because when he's talking about a lake, he's trying to get him to think of lake with word association. Then he's trying to make him think of Thousand Island dressing to think of Island Lake and the island in the lake.
Thousand Oaks.
Yeah, because eventually they're worried they're not going to get there in time. And then we've got a jet ski chase in which, man, I never knew that they made these freakish old 1979 jet skis. First
these
off,
those things are
awesome.
Proper
jet skis. They look like droids from Star Wars, to be honest.
I said awesome.
Yeah, and also watching some of the motorcycle scenes as well as the jet ski scenes, I'm pretty sure they had Adam West doing his own stunts.
No way.
There's no way Adam West stepped foot out of doors in this film. Oh, can we talk real quick? See, speaking of like weird things other than, the jet skis there, which were awesome. I like how this is a fake Batmobile. Like, it looks like a velour Batmobile skin over a regular car.
I've seen better Batmobile replicas at my local comic book convention, which is a fairly small comic book convention.
It's kind of hilarious, but it looks like suede.
It's pretty bad.
Oh, man, it is by far the worst live-action Batmobile I've ever seen.
And they let him, go, I could do something. He just rips stuff out of there, and their goal is just like, well, I guess that's it. Let's start walking.
The guy who looks like Lurch just ripped apart the Batmobile. Well...
And I really wanted him to buy that Volkswagen Beetle from Weather Wizard. I really wanted to see him going down the road in that instead of the motorcycle, which part of the reason I think Adam West did some of his own vehicular stunts, a couple of things. Number one, there are these little things like training wheels you can get and put on a motorcycle, and that motorcycle had those on it in addition to the sidecar. You really notice them when the sidecar's off of it. And then number two, if you have watched some of the documentaries about the 1966 Batman show, which I have, Adam West did his own driving there and crashed the Batmobile pretty regularly. So they had like 20 Batmobiles over the span of that show.
I heard Burt Ward actually talking about how they shot the whole beginning there and the death-defying things where Adam West had a stunt double, but they A, couldn't afford, or B, didn't want to pay for a stunt double for Burt Ward, so Burt Ward had to sit in there and they busted him up real good or whatever. like he had to go to the hospital.
It's kind of like, we're going to need another Timmy.
Yeah, they were just like, well, Adam gets a stunt double. They're like, yeah, but you're not driving, so you'll be fine. And apparently that guy just drove the wheels off that car and busted him up real good.
Yeah, and then I don't know, man. The a lot of stuff goes on at that garage. A lot of slow-paced stuff goes on at that garage.
Hey, that's breakneck
it's very
speed.
Slow-paced. And I will say, it's the thing that I don't like what happens with a lot of superhero property, where there is a level of shame while watching it sometimes. And this is the very first time where my significant other walked into the room as I was watching something and went, "What are you watching?" And
I picture very Grandpa Simpson's walking in and seeing Barton walking right back out in one motion.
And I had to explain that it was for the show, and everything was fine after that, as long as I wasn't just watching it because I like it.
I tried really hard to get my boys to watch this.
This better be an assignment.
And they had a problem when the local children's theater has much better costumes than this show did. You know, especially those wings on Hawkman. You know, we go to a lot of conventions as a family, and we see cosplayers that do so much better than the costumes that they cobbled together for this show.
This was 40 years ago, Bruce.
Yeah, you know what? Cloth was not like a foreign idea. Feathers existed. I mean, he's got like tissue paper wings instead of like feathers on his wings.
So the two writers of both shows, like the head writers, are Peter Galley and Mike Marmer are their names. And first of all, they should be absolutely ashamed of themselves. This thing is awful. But when you go through their resumes, like it makes sense. Like they worked on Donnie and Marie, and they worked on like the Mandrell Sisters show. And then one of the guys worked on Love Boat, you know.
All good shows.
Yes, all of these things are great. But Mac Daddy, number one thing is that the first guy worked on, he was the writer for 227.
Oh, I love some 227, boy.
227 was the place to be.
Well, if he's done nothing, if he did nothing else, he introduced the world to Jack K. Oh. And for that, he gets a lifetime pass.
Yeah, but personally, I preferred Amen to 227, but that's a story for another day.
Oh, Amen's a good one, too.
Now, I don't know, man. I think we have talked about everything that we can say about these two episodes. I guess the last thing I will say is I think this was the only attempt Hanna-Barbera ever made at live-action programming, specifically primetime network live-action programming geared at adults more than children.
That can't be true. They absolutely could not be true. They had to have had something else because, remember, they were always up against Sid and Marty Krofft. So
yeah,
they
but
had
that's
to...
Race to the bottom.
I think, but Sid and Marty Krofft was not primetime, okay? And they weren't network, you know. And this is primetime network live action, but I really feel like this might have been the only live action production. Hanna-Barbera tried it, realized it wasn't for them.
No, definitely not.
Gentlemen, we've seen the results of what we've done here, and frankly, we don't like it. We're going to have to shut this whole live action thing down. Let's keep repeating the background of the Flintstones for the next 58 years.
Shut her down.
Well, before we get to the final conclusion of this here program and wrap everything up, give you a lovely Robin rating, you know, we have to ask ourselves the most important question anyone could ever ask of anything ever is, how does this relate to Sylvester Stallone?
John Beal was the orchestrator for Legends of the Superheroes, and he composed the music for the trailer of the movie Cliffhanger, starring Sylvester Stallone. And it would make sense that there's a guy who specifically makes music for trailers, but I never really thought about it before, with one exception. The trailer for Lethal Weapon. If you were a kid when the trailer for Lethal Weapon came out, you know that it wasn't in the soundtrack. That song was great, and no one knew what it was. I tried to find that music everywhere. Again, it's not on the soundtrack. I bought it. I even bought the Lethal Weapon soundtrack specifically for the music. What is the name of that music? How are they making that noise? And this is before the internet, so it's not like you could look it up. And during the bad old days, if you wanted to know something like the name of a song and all you had was, it sounds like someone's hitting a glass tube with water in it, guess what? You were out of luck. But now we do live in the internet age, and the name of that music is called Original Lethal Weapon Trailer Music by John Eric Alexander. Whenever I hear someone complain about the internet, I tell them, I walk right up to them and I tell them, don't you remember how hard it was to find information? It was terrible. What if you were trying to find out the name for the song Rock and Roll Part 2 by Gary Glitter? You were screwed. Your Stallone connection this week is John Beal. Thank you. I'm Sean Kovacs. Thank you. Seriously. Thank you also. No, thank you. I should be thanking you. Thank you. Thanks.
All right. And speaking of thanks, I'd like to thank Bruce Leslie and ask him, why did you suggest this and what is your Robin rating?
Well, first off, I did find out that if you want to follow the trail, Man from Atlantis, starring Patrick Duffy, the Aquaman ripoff that was on TV in 1977 for 13 episodes, was produced by, I think it's called Solo Productions or something like that, which was a subsidiary, Solo Production Company, which was a wholly owned subsidiary of Hanna-Barbera. Ah. So their other live action was the Aquaman ripoff starring Patrick Duffy. And what would I rate this thing, man? This thing does not deserve a rating, exactly. But at the same time, everybody ought to watch it. So I don't know how to rate this sort of thing. Like, everybody needs to go watch this just to like set your barometer. Like, before you go out of Justice League starring Jason Momoa and Ben Affleck and Harry Cavill and say that's the worst DC movie yet, like, you kind of need to watch this. Like, you really got to understand just how much lower the bar can get. If you like to joke that, like me for a long time, I said maybe Batman and Robin is the worst of the Batman movies. Maybe The Quest for Peace is the worst that DC has ever given us in terms of live action. I got to go back and say, you know what? There's this thing out there. So the official rating, because you have to give it something, is this is a Jason Todd, but it doesn't even deserve that. It's like one of those 0 stars out of 5 kind of situations. But at the same time, everybody needs to see it. Just kind of like, everybody has to learn to do long division by hand. Even though you're always going to have a calculator, you still kind of ought to learn to do long division. This is the long division of comic book entertainment.
Bruce is a lot like Leonard Maltin there. Bomb. They're like, that's even below the 1 star. So, which really says, guess what, Leonard? You work on a 5-star system, not a 4, if you count bomb as as one to choose. Sean?
Well, first of all, that's really weird because I've always thought of Bruce as the Leonard Maltin of superhero comics.
Of course.
I always wanted to be the Gene Shalit, but that's a story for another day.
You know what? That's actually far more fitting.
I know a guy, I'm not even kidding when I say this to you, has the most dead-on Gene Shalit impression. Every time I see him, I make him do it. It is hysterical. For me, look, this thing is truly, truly awful. I don't care. I love this thing. I know it's awful. I had a very hard time watching it. I fell asleep like 3 different times while watching it basically 2 hours of programming. I fell asleep 3 times watching it, and it doesn't matter. I still love it anyway. I cannot state to you enough, dear listener. It is the worst thing you've ever seen, and but because it's so awful, that is what makes it great. I say this all the time. The worst thing in the world is not something that's terrible. It's something that's just mediocre. And this is definitely not mediocre. This is way less than that. And so therefore, it is so fun. And it's the kind of thing where if you went to a hipster bar and you looked at the TV and this was on, you would not look away. I mean, you couldn't hear what it was saying, but you definitely wouldn't look away because you would think the first thing you would do is go, is that supposed to be Sinestro? Like, I mean, it's what makes the thing so great. It's not. I love it. It's not any good. It's awful. But I've got to give it a Damian Wayne because it is so bad that it tips the scales of one of the worst things we've ever seen. This to me is like right up there with the Doctor Strange thing, which by the way was so fun to watch also.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much in that vein. I would say you can pretty much skip the roast episode. I think it's super weak. I mean,
you miss nothing.
There really is not a lot there worth value.
If it weren't for the roast episode, if it was just the first episode or 2 episodes similar to the first, I could have given it a rating. But the roast just fractures the whole thing so badly. It's like the hole in the boat, you know. Other than the hole, that's a pretty good boat, but you can't deny the fact there's a hole in the boat.
Yeah, and that sinks this ship quite well. But the first episode, it is out there and wacky and silly enough, and as dumb as it is, you kind of can't stop watching that bit because it's a lot of fun and because it's just dumb. It's that dumbness that you're just like, this is so bad, but yet I'm kind of digging it. So Sinestro in a dress jumping around and how he doesn't see that ring. And by the way, are we to think this is Kyle because of that mask, just on the count of, or is that? I don't know how things work. Anyway, for me, I got to go Stephanie Brown on this just because I think for the pair, Stephanie Brown for sure. But if I'm to go with just watching the first episode, I would put that at a Damian. But I do think that, you know, if you're in for a weird, funky time, and again, like Sean said, if you're looking back at something to go, you know what? There's a lot worse out there than we could have, than, Man of Steel, I didn't like it too much. Watch this. You'll change your mind. So that's it, everybody. Thank you again to everybody who helped support this show and voted on this episode. And they do that over at patreon.com/HMP. Get yourself on board for some of that action. Next week, we're going to be doing The Punisher. That's right, the full entire second season on Netflix. We're going to be talking about that next week. In the meantime, Bruce, where might we find more of your work on the internet?
Oh, you can just look for Chubby Wizard, chubbywizard.com. Look for Chubby Wizard wherever you find your other podcasts. And we've always got some good TV/movie/comic book talk going on at Chubby Wizard. And you can always head over to Amazon.com and pick up Nerd Spawn Genesis or Dragon Blinder or Chubby Wizard Wrath of the Manticore if you're looking for a fun read.
And Sean, I'm to understand you'll be found at everyone's local Krispy Kreme this weekend.
No, well, that's hilarious. But you can find me at Koufax Fan Fun at KoufaxFanFun.com. For if you're just a Koufax fan and you want to have fun, go to KoufaxFanFun.com.
I mean, 2 and 2 does equal 4.
It's actually about having fun with electric fans.
That is also true.
And just before the show's over, I got to mention Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park was a co-production of Hanna-Barbera and
that's
Kiss
sweet.
Productions.
Oh my God, that's so sweet.
Wait a minute.
Can you imagine
Kiss
what those
Productions?
meetings must have been like?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to tell you, but it's very secret. It's good, Gene Simmons. And, of course, the Film Find. Everybody check that out, too. That's it. Well, join us next week, won't you, for our review of Punisher Season 2 on Netflix. For Sean Koufax, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Goodbye, Marty and Evie.
A brute who thinks torture is cute, or a cheat who finds larceny neat, or a swine who says murder's divine. That's entertainment. A flood turning cities to mud. Or a blaze that keeps burning for days. Or a quake even Richter can't take. That's entertainment. Now it might be a blight on the crops of Iran, a drought wiping out all the rice in Japan. Some great invention of man, like an aerosol sprayer that kills the ozone layer. A louse buys his grandmother's house, ups the rent, though she hasn't a cent. Granny's sweet, but she's entertainment. Mayhem, violence, terror, pillage, plunder, looting. These are a few of my favorite things. Now the pain. Yes, the pain of a serious strain. The delight of a rattlesnake bite. And the grin when rigor mortis is in. That's entertainment. Oh, a youth who's already uncouth wants to meet pretty girls on the street with a plan that Jack the Ripper began. That's entertainment. I dig any big catastrophic device. A ship in the grip of a mountain of ice. I think diseases are nice. A condition that's chronic. A plague that is bubonic. The jolt of my lightning bolt I can use